thank you thank you very much for joining me. Obviously, I've had a little look at the film itself, and as we said previously before we came on camera, it was an incredibly powerful piece of work for me, and it hit me very much on the gut level. How did your involvement begin in terms of, obviously you are the writer, you are the director of the piece, and Andy was due to be on the call with us. Can you go through in brief how the collaboration between yourself and Andy came about?
Yeah, well, so originally I heard that the Humane Society was looking to do a new campaign to sort of bring awareness to the fact that animals are still being tested on, and hopefully to ban it globally. And so I basically pitched them an idea, which was, this rabbit sort of talking about his experience in a kind of casual way, in this sort of mockumentary style. And somehow was able to convince them to let me lead them down this road. And Andy, is just one of the greatest stop motion, puppet builders, world builders. And so we were able to get in touch with Andy and sent him the script and had a great chat with him, and he was into it, and he came on board. And yeah, I mean, it was just kind of, originally he was just going to do the puppet. And then after, I think I kept massaging the idea that maybe he did more. And then luckily, he really believed in the cause and wanted to come in and help. And so it just organically happened that we got to work together. And, he's just so incredible. And hopefully he'll join us, but he's just the loveliest person as well. And his team of people are all just lovely people. And Tobias Foraker has worked with him quite a bit in the past. He's an animator, and he came on for the same reasons. And it was just such a fantastic team to work with.
So for yourself, how important was it that you humanize the character of Ralph and you make him as relatable as possible for this project?
Make him what? Sorry, you
make him as
out.
Relatable as he could be. So, what was the importance for you in terms of humanizing the character?
Well, I just wanted the audience to hear what Ralph had to say. So, it was really about giving him a voice. What would he say if he could talk? And so there was a lot of discussion about how much we humanize him, and even things like fingers, like, does he have paws or does he have fingers? And fingers are a great way to sort of communicate. So, and, the other thing we talked a lot about was performance. I really wanted a detailed performance. And so we were trying to figure out the size of his head, because the bigger his head is, the more we could build into the armature, which is like the skeleton.
The more expressions,
Yeah, and so it was finding that balance, and we went through, quite a few different renderings to try and find the right note. And yeah, so there was a lot of looking at reference and trying stuff and sketching and trying again. So it was quite a process.
So so to what degree do you think using stop motion animation as opposed to maybe another type of filmmaking approach, how do you think that benefits this particular subject matter?
Well, I think, like, I love in-camera stuff, whatever that is. And so the idea of creating a puppet, a tangible, physical object that is moving and talking, it becomes real. It just feels real. I was thinking about, like, E.T., for example. That was, that's like my first movie memory, and how important the movie still is to me. But there was no question that E.T. was real. And you go, well, he was real. I mean, he actually was there. He was physically moving, and he was real. And that just is so different from a CG thing. And so, yeah, so you can't, having it be stop motion allows you to film it in a real way, and he becomes real. And I just love stop motion. I just think it's such a great process. I've done a few things now in stop motion, and it's so time consuming.
Mm.
But once you start to see it come to life,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
so undeniable. I think it's because it's so cool
Mm.
that allows you to keep going, because it's so grueling.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it's on a good day we do like 4 seconds. You know,
that,
so
that's almost staggering to sort of comprehend, in terms of, because obviously it's a millimeter at a time. Um, just out of curiosity, whilst you're doing that, do you sort of like uh, sort of like you sort of combine the technical process, but also you have to put yourself in the mind of the character? Do you put yourself inside the character whilst you're doing the movements? Do you
well, so
empathize with the character, or how do you connect with it while you're doing that?
well, absolutely. I mean, my background is editing, so I always build it beforehand. You know,
Mm,
so I do some very basic storyboards, and then record the voice, cut it together, build in sound effects,
mm,
and then once I recorded Taika, for example,
mm,
uh, I've recorded his performance, so there's a little bit of reference from him. But then
mm,
the way Tobias and I would work together, the beauty of doing stop motion at this pace
mm.
is it's really slow, and you get to overthink every moment. You decide when he blinks, you
Yeah.
decide when he looks a certain way and takes a breath. And so pretty much every morning, Tobias and I would basically have a conversation about the next beat.
Mm,
And we had this great sort of back and forth where I would perform it for him and he would go, "Oh, so is this what you mean?" And he'd perform it back. And
mm.
neither of us are actors, so it's kind of funny how we're sort of interpreting performance. And so we ended up just acting back and forth until we sort of are saying the same thing. And so that was quite fun. And so yeah, so you think a lot about every detail, you know. And then I would build my sort of reference video for Tobias, where I would have like the storyboard at the moment,
Mm.
you know, and it's like to the second, to the frame. You know, the cuts are exactly what they
Wow.
need to be, because you don't, when you're shooting stop motion, you don't want to shoot extra stuff, because
No, no,
extra
no.
stuff is like a day.
Yeah,
You
sure.
know, it gets really specific. So sometimes I would shoot myself acting out something physically as like to have a reference for a move
Mm,
or an expression, um, and you know, and then I'd sort of send him this video with the voice, and
mm.
then a bunch of, you know, video of different things. And then again, it's like Tobias brought a lot to it as well, and he would get inspired while he was building certain things. And but yeah, so you think about every moment, every
That's
single thing is a choice.
so you have ultimately you have complete control of the performance.
Yes,
Would that be fair to say?
you absolutely do.
In terms of process, how do you think stop motion animation benefited this particular subject?
I think, you know, the beauty of having something real is an amazing thing, and you can really tell when you're looking at something that's a physical object.
Mm,
I think that really gives it a lot of sort of gravitas and weight. You can, connect you much more fully with what's going on in the story.
mm,
All the little nuances of lighting and fur moving, it's there. And
mm.
and I think that's one of the I think it's one of the beauties of stop motion animation, but particularly for this story, because you do need to connect with it. You don't want to be, you don't want to just be sitting back viewing it. You want to be, experiencing what Ralph's going through. And I
Mm,
think that the fact that he's real, his world's real, and
mm.
the story that he's talking about is real, is an amazing, combination of things.
So,
I was saying also,
sorry,
oh, sorry.
sorry, go on, Spencer, go.
I also just, the other thing that's just, you know, I didn't say this before, but it's like when you're filming it like it captures the soul. Like, I mean, that sounds silly, but there is life in it, because there's so much physical movement, and like you said, the lighting, and I don't know, you capture a human quality, or a handmade quality rather, and that seems to translate into a feeling. You can't really put your finger on it, but you can feel the difference. You don't get that with anything computer generated. It's very hard to.
It's fun, isn't it? Because to animate means to breathe life, and when you sort of get that with this, it really heightens it. that sort of sense of, you know, the littlest things. And it's things sometimes, you know, with many other mediums, you can't, you don't get even accidents, but with stop motion, you just get a life that's there then, because you sort of, you know, I know it's stop motion, but it's still live, frame at a time, sort of thing. So
it really is, yeah.
I
It's
mean,
live action, one frame at a time. You know, the other thing that's kind of interesting is, like, when we started shooting this, there was a heat wave. Remember that, Andy?
Yeah.
So that meant, like, every day after the shoot, Tobias would come in the morning, and the next frame, the sets would have shifted a little bit. So, you know, and as you're watching it, it's like, yeah, 4 seconds and then a shift. And then by the end, it was very cold, so we were getting opposite shifts. But in post-production, starting to, like, take out some of those set shiftings. And when I originally got rid of all of them, it actually lost that thing we're talking about. Like, it got too perfect. And so it was like finding this balance of making it, like, not raw, because it's not raw, but it is imperfect. And that's part of the charm of it. And it's, you know, and I think you get that with live action too. Things, sometimes you get a lens flare where you don't want one, and it just feels like it has a life of its own.
I was going to, there's so much within the sets themselves. There's so much detail, and I said to Spencer prior to you joining, Sandy, I've only watched the film a couple of times because it is so powerful. And what I didn't want to watch it because I didn't want to watch it. It was very upsetting to me personally, which is entirely the point of the exercise. But I saw a video prior to the video itself, which is the making of, which went into a lot of the detail behind the sets. Is there anything that, in terms of the minute details, you've got the cereal packets, you've got the toothbrush, you've got the magnets on the fridges, you've got little bits and pieces. Is there anything that you're particularly proud of in terms of bringing it to life? Because obviously Ralph on his own is a very magical creation, but if you don't put him in a real world environment, you don't sell the illusion.
Yeah, no, there's so many nice things. I think we both enjoyed quite a lot of the adding the details to it all. You know, there's so much richness in the littlest things, like the bar of soap with the cracks in on the side of the hand basin, and the fluff on his you know, his combs, and the broken razors in the bin. All the things that, just littlest tiny details that we've been, you know, a lot of fun to make. The radios, the food mixers, the glass for the light to pass through in the living room. I mean, there's so many nice things in there that bring it to life. I mean, light's such a magical quality in these things. So being able to let that happen, even in the laboratory, you know, as dark as that is, they sort of, you know, the sterile lighting, those fluorescent tubes, they give so much to it, and, you know, change the environment, change the mood, and all of those little details. You know, there's so many things. It's difficult to pick a favorite. I think it's all part of, you know, the whole thing is the favorite. Really.
Absolutely. I was going to bringing up more into the performances of the characters. Obviously, I think the casting of Taika in the role of Ralph, I think the performance he brings and the pathos and in such a very small space of time really brings everything to life, alongside obviously the animation and the set design and everything. To what degree did he have an involvement or an influence in terms of influencing maybe the way the character was animated, and also maybe bringing more to the characterization than was on the page?
Well, I mean, Taika is just one of the funniest people around, so that sort of goes with that saying. But he just has such a great sense of humor and sense of timing, and you know, it's sort of like when I thought of Taika, and even when I brought it up, it was like you could instantly imagine what these words would sound like coming out of his mouth, and he just delivered. I mean, he just does that so well. And we had quite a fun session of trying some stuff and finding the right note. Yeah, I mean, he's just great. I mean, the thing that is also kind of great about Taika is I mean, him doing this in particular is he's like the busiest person I know. You know, he's in the middle of directing, you know, the next Marvel film. He's writing and getting ready to direct the next Star Wars movie. And this is all happening at all the time, and 10 million other things he's doing. And so just to
I'm
find
curious to know whereabouts in his schedule did this slot in? Out of
this is
curiosity.
like this is like a few days before he started shooting Thor. So
oh my god, I genuinely, do you know when you're like, I have no idea how someone has that much time, and that's and to be that creative and divide themselves so obviously be so regimented.
they say if you want to get something done, ask someone who's busy. You know, don't figure it out. Andy's busy too. He's juggling a lot all the time. So
yeah, I was about to say, because you've I don't know how long ago since you finished work on because you do work with Wes Anderson, sir, do you not?
Right, yeah.
And I know we're still waiting on the French Dispatch to be released.
Yeah. All of us.
but yeah, no, as I said, you'll be proud. I watched a little bit of the Grand Budapest last night. It's one of my favorites. So I was sitting there at 1 o'clock in the morning with my wife, and I'm on my phone. Too much detail. I was going to say, as filmmakers, bearing in mind the subject matter, how do you detach yourself from the creative process? Because obviously it's a very emotionally divisive topic.
You mean from the Ralph story?
Whilst you're doing it, obviously you're doing, you know, you're handling puppets that have got injuries on them, and you obviously have the lab sections of the film, which are obviously the most upsetting potentially. Is it literally you get so wrapped up in the technical side of it that you don't have that emotional connection, or does that make sense?
It makes sense. No, I think I mean I don't want to speak for you, Andy, but I think you actually don't, you know, and it's sort of this kind of you go between the two. You actually have to empathize with the characters, and you want to feel what they're going through, and then you have to execute it. But you sort of have to start from an honest place, because you sort of want people to feel, and that's kind of the key. So if you're not feeling it, I think for me it wavers between the two. I mean, even just as we're building it, you do get worked up, and I think that's important. And you try and put that in as much as you can. Certainly in terms of performance stuff, you know.
I think when you're making them as well, you know, because you're looking to bring it that sort of reality and what Spencer's after and what everybody else, you know, it needs from him as a performance and the detail of it all. So you're looking at research and photographs that are, you know, quite uncomfortable, and then you're trying to put that in and give the character all of that, as well as his environment, and, you know, the sort of shave patches and the neck braces and the sort of angry eye and the damage, and then, you know, to give him, you know, the sort of the warm and the cold between his house and that place, and so you're striving to, you know, give him all of the technical and physical things to tell the story, but it's very difficult when you talk about him outside that, because you just get upset. I mean, I think we did in the studio, when you're being asked questions about him, then you switch, and then it becomes quite, you know, it becomes emotive, and you know, your empathy falls with him, and then you can get quite upset by it.
Prior to you joining us, Andy, I asked Spencer how you came on board with this particular collaboration and this particular project. I'd appreciate maybe your side of it in terms of how you became involved initially with Save Ralph.
Well, we got Spencer and Humane Society and Jeff got in contact with us. You know, we've been working with Wes on a couple of productions and some other more recent stop motion work, and asked us if we would be interested in helping on this project. And we sort of read through the idea, sort of immediately we were in. As soon as you even get an idea of what it is that we're trying to do, we said yes to it all. And then initially it looked like I was only going to be able to help making the character, but I couldn't bear the thought of not trying to do as much as I could for it. So we've got a film studio next to the model studio. And it seemed simpler, bearing in mind this is also throughout the pandemic. So we would build it all here, and then it was a very tricky job to do, because we wanted everything to be as good as possible to give it as most impact as we could. And we were having to duck and dive between people's schedules and trying to keep people together for it, because it was going to take quite a long time to do. It would do anyway, but because of the pandemic, that didn't help. So we had a few sort of handicaps to get it out of the way and to keep it to the sort of impactful level that we've managed with it all. And so it kept sort of pulling you in. So from that little email, would you be interested in helping with this? It just developed into this year of work.
Sort of snowballed slightly,
I think it's funny because it's interesting, because like stop motion, when you're actually animating, I was saying beforehand, it's so time consuming and grueling, but when you get to play back that like half a second, it's sort of like you can't not keep going, because it's so exciting to see these frames come to life that it's kind of you sort of get sucked in, and you're like, oh god, we got to keep going, and you can't stop once you
it's
get
that
going.
sort of moving picture books. You know they're set up so nicely, aren't they? You can look at it. There's just missing the writing at the side. And keep looking and looking, and particularly with this one, because there's so much detail in it. It's so rich to create the world and the background of what's happened to it. You can rewatch it as long as you can bear to rewatch it in the right way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have to play devil's advocate, gentlemen. I have to ask you the question. So, as I said to Spencer, from yesterday, the video has had in the region of about 11 million views on YouTube. I think the petition has been signed by just under 60,000 people. And I have to say, what would you say to someone who watches that video but still feels and advocates the use of animal testing for cosmetics?
I would say they don't understand the issue, because I can't imagine anyone understanding what's happening and going, yeah, keep doing that. It's not the best way to do it. It causes pain and suffering. Why would anybody think that was the way to go? I can't imagine. I haven't met anybody. I don't know. Do you know anybody who thinks that's?
No, I think there's it's a medieval practice that hopefully this helps educate to stop. And I think Tyker, actually, it was a quote I remember seeing him say, said, if you don't understand this and sign up, we can't be friends.
You know what? That's about right. It's about right for you. Yeah. If you don't understand this issue, then you're not a friend of mine. It really is. I think it's that cut and dry. There's no gray area there.
But again, it's really simple. Like, there are better ways to test these chemicals that are more useful to humans. So torturing animals and doing it the way they do it, it's actually not, it doesn't get you where you want. It doesn't make the product safer. So it doesn't do what it's meant to do. Why is the question?
As I said, morally and ethically and on every conceivable level, anybody who cares about, to animals, pets, if they have a cat, they have a dog, if they look after anything on a long-term basis, irrespective of what it is, this should have an impact. This should make a massive inroad into that. And it really genuinely has. It did for me. I said prior to you joining us, Andy, that it really is a very effective, I don't cry for much these days, hopefully. But it definitely, I had to walk away. On my last question is completely off topic. And it's a light one. So can you both describe for me your perfect Sunday afternoon?
Sunday roast outside right now at there's 2 pubs I could think of that would be pretty good, but it's not. We're not there yet.
We're not there yet. So close. So close. you can taste it now. And how about yourself, Spencer?
Perfect Sunday. Well, after making this, just a lot. I think just sleeping all day, like when I was a teenager. Just a long nap. Wake me up when it's Monday.
Oh,
Spencer's done so much extra work on this beyond the shoot, before the shoot, but after the shoot, it's been a long time. It's a lot of effort. So
it's just a marathon.
Well done to you.
It's just a marathon, and you sort of, you get to the end of it and you're like, where am I? So, yeah.
Probably the east end of London.
Yeah. it was fun. I had everything with Andy and his team was just like so much fun. It was kind of what filmmaking should be. It's inspiring, it's fun, you can't wait to do more. And normally you get a bit of that, but there's also it's hard, it's hard work, and it seems quite glamorous on the outside, but it's that sort of endless, anything is less fun when you just don't sleep, when there's just not enough hours in the day. When you get to work on something where it just is, it was fine. It was great. So I'm so grateful that, we got to work with Andy, and it was just fantastic.
So gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. It has been it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to both of you. Irrespective of technical difficulties, I don't care. And as I said, I will do everything that I can to raise awareness with this. And again, have a lovely day in Sydney. And where are you based, Andy?
East London.
In London, in Sydney. Have a lovely evening. Have a lovely day. Take care now.
Thank you.